I hereby call the Brockton School Committee to order, it being time 7 p.m. on Tuesday, January 16, 2024. We are in the George M. Romm Little Theater here at Brockton High School, 470 Forest Ave. I do need to read the following into the record. Welcome to the meeting of the Brockton School Committee. This is the agenda that will be discussed this evening. Please note the hearing of visitors is included. If you have a statement or questions, please give your name to the secretary. Mrs. Campbell has sign-in, and again, it's limited to 3 minutes in conversation. In addition to attending, the public can view this meeting via television on Comcast Channel 8 and also on the 1071 HD version and online via the following link, which is www.youtube.com/TheBrocktonChannels. I will establish a quorum right now. Mrs. Sullivan? Here. Mr. Gomes?
Here.
Ms. Ehlers?
Here.
Ms. Oliver?
Here.
Ms. Rodriguez?
Here.
Ms. Azak?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
I'm here as well. We have established a quorum. I would respectfully ask you to please stand and salute the American flag at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I do also just want to let you know, I just got off the phone with DPW Commissioner Pat Hill and the facilities team here. We've had a drastic drop in temperatures. There's a sheet of ice throughout the city of Brockton. So Jamie Domestico from the school side has given us a list of schools that are targeted, including Brockton High. We will have crews throughout the night sanding and salting. So I just wanted to give you an update on that, and I'm going to ask you to drive carefully when you leave tonight. We have done agenda item 1. Agenda 2 is the hearing of visitors. And I will read the hearing of visitors. The first one is Mr. Hamilton Rodriguez, please. Oh, Mr. Rodriguez, come to the podium, please. Good evening.
Good evening. So I submitted a FOI request to the CFO's office a few weeks back. It's been over 10 days. Okay, can you hear me? I submitted a FOI request to the CFO's office a few weeks back. It's been over 10 days. By law, the city has 10 days to respond to my FOI request. I haven't received my FOI request. It's in regards to the monies that were misplaced in the school committee, the $13 million or $14 million. I understand the city council has covered that cost, but I would like to know what happened to the money. I need to see the expenditures. The public needs to see the expenditures to that money. And I'm still waiting for the answer to my FOI request. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Next individual that has signed in this evening is Ms. Cynthia Hodges, please. Ms. Hodges. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here today. I want to make everybody first perfectly clear that I received this information that I'm about to bullet point in the mail. So that is why I think some of it I was told earlier today. I didn't know because I was at work that it was on Facebook. But as many of you know, Tony Rodriguez, a member of the Brockton School Committee, is seeking an appointment for the vice chair of the Brockton School Committee. And I understand he may seek further election offices for someone to be elected or appointed to any position, especially one who is in charge of safety, stewardship of the children here in Brockton High. Temperament, past actions, lawsuits, threatening demeanors are all important factors to consider when evaluating a candidate. In the right light, I have set forth some information that I believe is important for the public to realize. Tony Rodriguez sued in 2007 the city of Brockton demanding a position for the Brockton Police. He was rejected by the courts as he was the lowest score of a minority candidate. Tony Rodriguez in 2009 was fired by the Department of Corrections as a prison guard which fine was upheld for multiple factors, including Rodriguez was early disciplined for not providing medical evidence for an unexcused absence. Rodriguez threw food tray at an inmate. Rodriguez failed to disclose the incident to his superiors to include it in his report. Rodriguez's action was caught on tape. Rodriguez's conspiracy with his fellow employees to cover up the incident. Rodriguez repeatedly violated practice for forced inmate visitors, fellow employees, religious leaders to be delayed, and he was taunted by comments from Rodriguez that he was a piece of ass. I'm not gonna cuss. He can't wait all day. Rodriguez's supervisor found him extreme, angry, and hostile, including regarding issues of promotion, where Rodriguez said, "If I ever see that mother F on the street, I will F him up." He was referring to the superintendent of the prison. Rodriguez further said, and related to killing, he would have one of my boys on the street do it. In the summary of all the above taken from the public documents on the case, I'm not going to read the case, but if someone want to see it, it was brought to my attention, demonstrate a complete disregard from one public action, clear anger management issues, and arguable criminal conduct by threatening a life of a public official. How can such a person ever be qualified for service in the public of other children? Tony Rodriguez is in violation of the state ethics law. Publicly solicited. He also campaign supported funding in a recent 2003 election for a candidate.
The time is up.
Okay, I'm sorry. If anyone want to know any further information, I have it here in my documents. Sorry, thank you.
The next hearing of visitors, Mary LaCivita, please. Good evening.
Good evening. Sounds like someone has some personal issues to get out. I would like to speak about the audit. And I'd like to read a brief quote that I have hanging on the wall in my office. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. I'm sure most of you know that that's something that James Baldwin wrote. So my question for the committee is, can you give us an update on, when the audit is going to start? It's something we need to face, and we need to get through it. The last 2 fiscal years, for example, I've examined the documents that list the legal fees that have been charged to this committee and to the mayor, apparently, which was brought to my attention by this past year, the mayor almost always having an attorney sitting next to him. Those documents show that the budget has been way overspent in the last 2 years. And I'm still gathering the data on that because I understand I don't have all of it, but that's just one example. So I'm really looking, and I'm sorry I'm out of breath, for an update tonight on where we are with that so we can get started and just get through it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We have to keep the quorum, please. The last individual hearing of visitors, Kim Langford, please. Good evening.
Hi. So, tonight I want to talk about potential repercussions of some of your committee members' inactions and potentially, frankly, your lack of leadership. So I've talked about before the fact that you guys have the data, right? The data has been there for years regarding things like the amount of teachers you have, census data, COVID, people leaving the city, the amount of money that people weren't making, things that are going to affect the amount of students that are going to be here and the amount of students that weren't going to be here, and the fact that that is going to influence your budget. As a result, you lost teachers because you had to lay them off. So what are those repercussions that I'm talking about? So something that is close to my heart is suicide awareness. It's something we don't talk about enough, and we don't really share enough really here in our community. At one point in time, I was a BHS student, and I had thoughts of suicide. And if it wasn't for a couple of my teachers and one really, really great guidance counselor, I don't know where I'd be today. So I want to talk about a couple of quick facts because I know we don't have a lot of time. Every 2 hours and 11 minutes, one person under the age of 25 completes suicide. For middle and high school age youth, ages 12 to 18, suicide is the second leading cause of death. In ages 10 to 14, we have seen an alarming increase in suicide. The number of suicide for the age group has more than doubled since 2006. Each day in our nation, there are an average of over 3,703 attempts by our youth, young people ages 9 to 12. In the past 60 years, the suicide rate has quadrupled by men ages 15 to 24 and doubled for females. For every completed suicide by youth, it is estimated that 100 to 200 attempts are made, and firearms remain the most commonly used suicide method amongst youth, accounting for more than 49% of completed suicides. So again, I circle back to the fact, and I'm just going to be blunt, for those that have come back to the school committee, I keep telling you, you need to do better by the tools that you use and how you communicate to to the residents here, because frankly, it's not good enough.
Thank you, Ms. Langford. That concludes Agenda Item 2, Hearing of Visitors. Agenda Item 3 is MASC training, role of the school committee, and we do have the MASC representative, but Dr. Cobbs has respectfully asked if we would consider taking his report, which is Agenda 4, prior to MASC. What is the will of the committee? This would be flipping 4 for 3. Is there a... Is that correct, Dr. Cobbs? I'm sorry. Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Motion to approve swapping out number 3, agenda item MASC training for number 4, which is the report for Superintendent of Schools.
Motion made. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Motion was made, properly seconded, to take number 4 out of order and hear it before 3. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. We will take that out of order. At this time, Agenda 4 is Report of Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Cobbs.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, school committee members, for granting my request. As we mentioned a couple of school committee meetings back before the end of the school year, that we like to have the schools come and represent, what's going on in their schools, the good, the bad, the ugly, or and I go out to the schools and I visit, I walk through, and there's a lot of good going out there. There's a lot of things happening in the schools. Everybody's feeling the shortage of teaching staff and qualified teachers. It's a common thread throughout the district as well as the state and the country for that matter. But I walk through the classrooms, I see the teachers engaging with students, I see the students engaging with each other and learning, and sometimes the classrooms are messy and they're noisy, and that's exactly how they should be. And the students, that means they're learning. So we want to make sure that we have those schools come to you and present and talk about what's going on. I'll turn it to Deputy Wolder to say a few things first, and then we'll present the Kennedy School.
Good evening, everyone. Just to reiterate, the reason that we're here is for our children. And so the closer you can get to what is happening to kids in school, the more impactful it is for your decision making. And so, as you know, we have continued day by day by day to address our staffing needs, to address our financial needs, and to make sure that what is happening in the classrooms, our students are least impacted by some of the things that they have no control over. Ultimately, it is their right to be in those spaces, to be educated, and we work for them. And so the power of the voice of the people who are coming before you speaks to the work that they're doing and that the teachers are doing in the schools and the support staff is doing in the schools every day to make sure when children show up, they get what they need. And when they can't get exactly what they need, it is our responsibility to make sure that we do whatever we can to get it to them and to make sure that they have the equitable access they deserve. They have all of the resources and opportunities that every child should have a right to, and that we are moving forward in our thinking, because I said to you a very long time ago, it is now taking more to educate our children. We have to be realistic about the impact of what has happened over the last few years and how prepared they're coming, how much the push is academically for us to close any gaps and accelerate learning. And in order to do that, we have to be very deliberate in our approach to that work, really targeting and looking at students who are historically marginalized and making sure that we are not missing any children in the approach that we take to educating students. So it is important for you to hear from every single principal and to hear from them, not only just to get to know who they are and the work that they're doing, but the passion that they have for making sure our students are getting what they need in our schools across this city. So I'm going to ask that Mr. Lumna come on down, and I believe they are both presenting. Ms. Kistler is presenting as well. And these are brief presentations just to give you a snippet of what's happening. And as always, we invite you to spend some time in those schools and in those classrooms so you can experience the joy of education in Brockton.
Thank you, Mrs. Walder. Good evening, Mayor Sullivan, Dr. Cobbs, school committee members, and cabinet members. My name is Gary Lumna, and I am the principal of the Kennedy School. I've been the principal for the last 2 years, and before that I was the assistant principal from 2008. And it's my honor to introduce Mrs. Kelly Kistler, who is my amazing assistant principal, who keeps me grounded and keeps me working hard each and every day. So we make a wonderful team at the Kennedy School. It's our pleasure to highlight some of the school programs for you at the John F. Kennedy this evening. And I also have given you a green folder that has some additional information for you. So here we are, our introduction and welcome. Our enrollment is 524 students. Some of the specialized programs that we offer at the Kennedy School, our special ed strand is our K-1 life skills. We have K-1 city resource room and a grade 2 city resource room that add a great deal to our Kennedy School. And our motto is here, once a Kennedy kid, always a Kennedy kid, coined by Mr. Brian Rogan, who was principal of the Kennedy School for a number of years over there at 900 Ash Street. As you can see in the picture, this is our 4th grade class with Mrs. Maureen Donnarumma Carpentieri, who's the head of our extended day and a 4th grade teacher with us here this evening, Mr. Ed Osgood and Mrs. Lauren Roach. That's the opening day. You can't probably really see from the picture, but they do have a welcome sign, and some of our friends are lounging in their green and white Adirondack chairs on the opening day of school, because that's the Kennedy way. Take a look at the next slide. We are proud of our growth in the following areas. We have our Lexia data, which we continue to increase the number of students who are on or approaching grade level materials. If I could refer you to your handout, sorry, I need the glasses. This paper here in your green handout, it's not on the slide, but I'd just like to read it to you very quickly. Gives you a little snapshot of what our data looks like using Lexia Core 5 in the school. The top is a graph, students by grade level of material, also known as GLM. And you can see the gray area where they are below, blue, starting and above. So if you just take a look at the paragraph below it, I'll read to the rest of you. Here is an example of student growth of all JFK students. In September 2023, 77% of the JFK students were working in below grade level material, while 23% were working on or in grade level material based on Lexia Core 5. Today, as we look at this, we have 54% of our JFK students working in below grade level material, while 46% are working in grade level material above grade level material based on Lexia Core 5. So we look at the gray, more blue, less gray as we're looking along. Take a look at the bottom section here. And this is our kindergarten students by grade level. Here's an example of student growth of our JFK kindergartners. So in September 23, 26% of our youngest students were working on in-grade level material. Today, 95% of our JFK kindergartners are in grade level material or above based on Lexia Core 5, which is absolutely huge. Thank you very much. And that's a credit to all of our teachers, especially our kindergarten teachers who work so hard. So you might ask, well, how does this impact our academics? But just think about these kindergarten students that we have. They're going to be taking MCAS assessments 3 years from now. We are working on their foundational literacy skills, so now they're able to proficiently read, write, speak, and listen with grade level text, which is absolutely huge. Thank you. I want to go on and read to the rest of you the other parts here. So social emotional learning, our second bullet. Teachers are implementing Character Strong with commitment. Students love engaging with our program and use the common language. In your folders, you also see PBIS, our PBIS folder, and the culture that we work on at the Kennedy School. So it's not just charts and stickers. It is a culture of caring, accountability, respect, empathy, and safety. And of course, you know our school mascot, Kenny Cougar cares. So this is where we see this posted everywhere through the school, and it's represented by all of our students and every one of our staff members. And Mrs. Kistler is so good because she organizes all the Shine tickets, and we have the prizes for the students on Friday. If they get Shine tickets during the week, we pick them out at lunchtime, and they have the boxes of prizes that they come up. And they all want to come in, and they say to us, Mr. Lumley, did you pull the Shine tickets yet? Where's Mrs. Kistler? She's out there getting them. They're so excited to do that. That little thing, along with the accountability factor, is absolutely important. Continuing on, family engagement. The Kennedy School has increased the attendance of multilingual and special education families during our after-school activities and events, which goes to show you that all of our parents and our students are feeling welcomed at the Kennedy School. So we have, at conferences, 96% attendance. When we have open houses, we have different activities at the school, we have, on average, 200 to 300 students and their families coming to the Kennedy School. So you should see that parking lot is absolutely full, and Mr. Rodriguez could tell you that when he comes and sees the programs there at the school. They absolutely love coming back after COVID to the Kennedy School and getting involved and being back in our community. If you could take a look at the next slide, please. We are working to address the following areas because we always really need to look critically at everything that we do in the building for our students. The bottom line is what is best for our students, especially our Kennedy students. So our English language arts, we continue to work on perfecting a blended literacy model using Wonders and Lexia. Blended literacy, the Lexia lessons, the skill builders, the whole and small group instruction, and the Wonders instruction of our new reading program that is being very well received from our students and our staff, and it's going to help us in our proficiency and moving forward. All of these students, you look at those kindergarten students, that trajectory going all the way through so that can help them become independent readers. Data. We are always ensuring that all our teachers feel confident finding and analyzing data so they can use it to inform instruction. One of our biggest challenges is common planning and trying to find enough staff to cover for the teachers so they can actually dig deeper into the data, looking at that, and trying to inform instruction based on that data. So that was one of our challenges, but we try to work on it, and it's kind of a jigsaw puzzle, but we do put it together to get the teachers at grade level to be able to speak with each other, including the specialists. Scaffolding instruction. You hear a lot about scaffolding. The Kennedy staff continues to work on adding appropriate scaffolds for students to ensure all students can access grade level material throughout the day, and that's based on the data, reflecting on which scaffolds work, the developing new strategies that meet the needs of our students. And lastly, why do we come to work every day? Because we are at the Kennedy School, but we also represent the Brockton Public Schools, of which we are very proud. And one of our students, Tristan, in grade 4, sums it up so nicely. I love the Kennedy School. Everyone here represents kindness. We are proud to be Cougars who care. So if you have any questions for me, I will be here. The folder, I added a few other things with our help. I have literacy news in there for you from our literacy coach. I've also included our Kennedy Cougar Chronicle that Mrs. Kistler puts out for us every morning, and it's quite informative and color-coded. It looks great, and it's good because it gives the teachers the information right away. You have a staff roster and just a couple of other things in there. But I do want to end with you with this. If some of you know DIBBLS, DIBBLS is Dynamic Indicators of Beginning Early Literacy Skills, and I know that you have touched base on this. So talk about students not having much of a filter, and I will tell you that they do assessments all the time, especially in kindergarten. And if you notice this is called nonsense word fluency, where they take the initial consonants, the vowels, and the final consonants, S-E-P-R-O-P-L-A-M, and they have to say that. And so one of the students came up to one of my kindergarten teachers and said, "Look at this, Mrs. Shari. I can't believe it. Mr. Lumna is now a nonsense word." So if you could see this, these are the two words, hap and lum, L-U-M. So I've now become a nonsense word to my students at the Kennedy School, but they are doing very well. And so for this and so much more, we thank the school committee, Dr. Cobbs, our cabinet, and everyone here at the school committee meeting tonight. Thank you for listening to us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
You'll never be a nonsense word to us. And I have to say, I visited the Kennedy and was talking about the data, and one of the powerful things, you think sometimes students are too young. Mr. Lumna found out what the data was looking like for his students, and instead of just having a conversation with the adults about it, he actually talked to the students about it and talked to them about their own learning and had them thinking about what they produced versus what they were capable of. And so when you see the increase in his data over time, it's not just what's happening in the classrooms, it's how they're supported. And so definitely will never be nonsense to us. So I want to have Lisa Thomas and team come up. Lisa is the principal of South Middle School, and she is going to do the same, give you some information about the powerful things happening at South.
We love gifts.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here tonight to share a little bit of a snapshot of South Middle School. Luckily, there's a PowerPoint kind of semblance. We kind of adhere to this in the time limits. Otherwise, we would talk to you all day about the great things happening in the school, but we will try to be as brief as possible. So I'm Lisa Thomas, proud principal of South Middle School. Here with me tonight are my other dedicated team members. This is John Garsha, the assistant principal. John Lynch, associate principal. Thank you for being with me tonight. We are all here to represent South Middle School, but very long ago we attended 3 out of the 4 campus middle schools way back when, North, West, and South, but now we are all proud Dragons. We are all graduates of Brockton High School and products of the Brockton Public School System. All right, so our current enrollment is 476 students. Our enrollment numbers at South tend to increase throughout the school year due to our very expansive bilingual program, which primarily consists of students who speak Cape Verdean Creole and Portuguese. We have a TBE program, and those support our students who are newly acquiring English. We also have a variety of specialized programs, including Honors Academy, bilingual education, life skills classrooms, ASD, and emotionally impaired programs. Our core values at South are Dragon's Roar. We show respect, ownership, attitude, and responsibility. All right, so we are proud of growth in many areas, but to narrow it down to three, first and foremost, we are so proud of the school community that our state accountability has doubled. And we did some celebrating there. We have spent some time celebrating these wins and started with recognize the hard work of our students and our staff. It's a testament to all the hard work that everyone has done in order to improve in this manner. And this is evidenced by our 2023 MCAS scores. So we have increased our percentile from the 4th to the 8th, which again is a testament of the hard work of the entire school community. We recognize that there is still much to be done, but it's important to celebrate the growth along the way and celebrate successes as a school community. Our students are also showing growth through our STAR assessment. So we utilize STAR district assessments to progress monitor 3 times throughout the school year. And this assists us in action planning throughout the school year and addressing exactly what our students need. From our fall to winter assessment, we have shown gains in all areas, decreasing our students not meeting overall by 7%. We have also shown growth when we look comparatively to this time last year, so winter time last year to winter time this year. From our 23-star winter assessment, we have also decreased our students in the not meeting category by 5% and increased our students in meeting or exceeding by 4% overall. So what do we do with this data? I'm proud to say that South has a culture of sharing data to plan, goal set, and assess. Our teachers spend time looking at data regularly to effectively plan and utilize an inquiry cycle to plan, implement, and look at student work to assess. Our students also spend time looking at both our school data and their individual data to assess and set goals. Our social emotional learning and student ownership is something we've been really vested in. Our students' social capacity and emotional well-being is also a top priority for us at South. We have been working hard to implement a system of supports for students while simultaneously increasing student voice. New this year to our students is the Character Strong program, which provides Tier 1 social emotional learning. And we supplement this program additionally with social emotional lessons constructed after looking at our behavior referral data through Infinite Campus, which helps us to identify area of concern throughout the building or throughout grade levels. We also focus on topics like identifying triggers, using coping skills, conflict resolution skills, among other things that you might imagine middle schoolers need. As for student ownership, we have intensified our focus in this area and see great progress. It's important for our students to know how to access their own data, assessment scores, attendance, behavior, missing assignments, etc. We have spent time teaching our students how to access this information and additional time helping them to set goals for growth. For example, after taking our Fall Star assessment, students were given a worksheet or graphic organizer to find and identify their score and set a new attainable score for the winter assessment. So we set this challenge for all students to show growth, and we got to have a celebration for our top 20 students who showed growth in ELA and math with a dessert party, which everyone enjoyed, especially us. Our message is that we value and celebrate growth no matter the starting point. All right, and we are working to address the following areas. So the same point that I talked to you about, we're really proud of our growth. By no means necessary are we done with our growth or satisfied with where we currently are. So first and foremost, our students not meeting expectations. Although we are celebrating our growth in this area, we recognize that most of our students are still in the not meeting or partially meeting. And so we're not planning to stand still, but instead we'll continue to hit the gas and accelerate. This again loops back to ensuring that we're collaboratively working to identify our students' area of need and purposely planning to address these areas in a variety of ways. We are spending time in content teams and other teaming structures to dig through data, identify specific areas of need, and create actionable plans to increase student learning and output. So we expect to continue to see improvement in this area. And student supports. So on the other end, we talked about social emotional learning and our growth there. But while we are continuing to focus on educating the whole child academically, socially, and emotionally, we are working with less supports in this area. In prior school years, we have received funding to support and sustain our PBIS program, which Mr. Lumna talked a little bit about, which stands for Positive Behaviors, Interventions, and Supports. So much of our school culture is rooted in the core values and shared expectations that were collectively born from the establishment of our PBIS team. We're also fortunate enough in prior years to have a mentor for our students, along with a full-time Tier 2 behavior interventionist. And another challenge that we're currently facing is lack of translators positioned inside of our school. So with a large population of bilingual students and families, you can imagine this can present some challenges for us, effectively communicating with families in the moment and sometimes even the students in the moment. We recognize and understand the importance of our students' social-emotional state and needs for a variety of supports, especially post-pandemic. So one creative solution we have implemented, despite our shortages, is the creation of a restorative reflection room, which gives struggling students the opportunity to engage in restorative practices and focus on particular social skills. Despite present challenges, we will continue to find ways to creatively move forward with supporting our students, and we are dedicated to doing so. All right, so I couldn't fit any more pictures on this slide, or I would have. But here we have, I hope, a wide representation of what I spoke about. A little bit of the climate and culture of the school there to the left with a physical display. Down below are our teachers waiting to welcome the students on the first day of school. In the middle, we have our student actually who gave this quote, Ari Shanna, giving a big hug to a social studies teacher. This was during our holiday party that we had, and he was so excited to receive his gift that I believe was a basketball. And he was overjoyed and gave her a big hug. On the right there, we are honoring our Dragon of the Month with Mr. Garsha, and all smiles there. And up above, we have one of our family and community engagement events, which was our Back to School Bash, and that's a limbo competition, which the adults all sat out of, but the students did a wonderful job. And we do have a quote from Aries, who brings a smile to our face every day. He loves coming to South because of the teachers, learning new things, and the events we have here. And I'm not sure if we're able to play the video on the bottom left, but if we're not, it's okay. It's just Aries. That's okay. Well, trust us, he was happy to give you this quote. He was excited. Okay. Any questions or comments for me? Do I call him? You are?
We'll take your order. We'll start with you, Ms. Ahlers, please.
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation, for both school presentations. Thank you very much, because this is why we're here. This is the most important thing that we do. But more importantly, what I want to say to our constituents is when you say something, you share a fact like our accountability score is doubled, I'm not 100% sure everyone understands that that's a little bit like turning the Titanic sometimes, depending on the student profiles you have, the programs you're offering. And so I just want to give credit where credit is due to make the changes in the metrics by looking at the data and then saying, okay, where are the gaps? And then coming in and plugging those gaps is exactly what we should be doing. And it's hard. And I'm going to quote one of my former colleagues, Ms. Cynthia Rivas-Mendez, who said once, what we do every day is really emotional work. And it is, because how can you not get attached to a student like that? How can you not care when you're in an environment like that? And so I'm sure everybody that leaves the campus and the school every day is exhausted. And I just wanted to say thank you, because this is what counts.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Mr. Sullivan, please.
Yes, just one comment for both schools, at Kennedy and South Middle. Great presentation. You can tell that you people really, really get into it. We put the kids 100% first at both schools. I just wanted to thank both of you for coming here tonight. We picked a lousy night to drive. But thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional committee members? Ms. Azak, please, followed by Mr. Gomes, please.
Thank you. Just to echo what other members have stated, thank you both for the presentation. So my family does have two, once a Kennedy kid, always a Kennedy kid. And I do love always getting the updates on South, and for always including us when you have events and stuff. I know I always get the invites, and we try to attend as much as we can. So thank you for including members that are not specifically assigned to that school. So I just want to say I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Gomes, please.
Likewise, I would like to say thank you for you guys for coming here and doing the presentation. It was great. We appreciate the work that all of you guys do and the energy, the time you put into this. I have to say, when you started doing the presentation, I felt this joy. It showed that it's about the students. So out of all the news we've been getting, this so far has been one of the best news I've gotten, seeing this presentation, honestly. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Ms. Oliver, please.
I also want to thank both of you guys for both school being here, and just to hear how great the students are doing, grade test-wise, and improvement that you guys are doing at both school, and especially at South, because I have a child at South, and I know with all the teachers that has left, and I know the loss that we've had over there with the educators that has left, and I know that I hear all about it every single night for my child, but I know you guys are doing a great job, and I truly, honestly appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing at South, and I can honestly say you have an ally right here, and I will promise that I will work with you guys to anything you guys need. I will be there to make sure that our kids are being educated and the resources there for both that I'm here. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Any additional comments or questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Okay, so next on the agenda, a quick update on the Brockton High School. We will do a more in-depth update on Brockton High School when the new principal comes before us. But Deputy Wolder and I would like to take a minute to just talk about some of the things that have changed and for the better at Brockton High School. Of course, you all know that, there's news in the paper, again, about Brockton High School students and the few that are being problematic. But some of the things that we talked about, and certainly Judy and I talked about back in November, the things that we were putting in place to address some of the issues, like, many students sitting in the cafeteria, day for hours and hours on end. Teacher absences, when we had an average of like 26 teachers absent a day, in the beginning of the school year back in November when we did our first update. So a lot of those things have changed. We're making incremental changes. Brockton High School has its issues. There's students that there's going to be fights. Every high school has issues. There's going to be fights. But the things that we put in place, like what I spoke about back in November, the security, safety specialists that are in the building. We have 12 that are in the building every day to help get the students to their classes and clear the corridors, to lock and unlock the bathrooms during certain periods of the day. Those people are in place, and that program it's taking root. It's being effective. Mr. Duarte met with a lot of the teachers one-on-one about the teacher absences, and we've gone from an average of 26 students absent in a day, absent in any given day, to about 8, which is huge. And of those 8, there's 4 of them that those are actually teachers we have to hire. And of the other 4, there's only a couple of periods out of the day when those classes aren't covered. So when I walk through the high school now, the first thing I do is walk around the building and walk through every cafeteria. And I see on average 1 class in the cafeteria, which is maybe 20, 25 students, instead of 4 classes, 100 students for periods of the day. So we're making changes, we're making improvements. The new leadership team is, worked hard with Mr. Duarte, and they're kind of getting their sea legs. They understand what's going on and how to address the issues. We're meeting with students, we're meeting with parents. We're doing the disciplinary actions that we need to take with students that take off and run away from teachers and swearing. So is it perfect? Is it 100% better than it was in November? Actually, yeah, probably. If you look at November, yeah, it probably is. But, it's making incremental changes, and I'd like to actually have Deputy Wolder address you as well, and then we'll take your questions on it.
So I lived in Brockton High for about 23 years, so my heart is always here, and I'm probably very defensive about the kids who attend school here, the staff who works here, and the great things that actually happen, because we tend to focus on the things that don't go well. We have made some significant changes to staffing and making sure that our classes are covered. That had a huge impact. You have to think about it. The school started with a few of us trying to run it, and then Mr. Duarte came in as interim, and now they're on their third principal this year. For a school that's significant, for a school this size, that is a lift for a new person that we really have to rally support around and make sure that that person is successful for self, but more importantly, successful for every child that goes to school here who deserves a good education. Part of that also, you know, we had every leader in this building was new to their jobs and had to learn their jobs on the spot and are still learning those jobs. And so that is work in progress that we have to continue to support. We have students who came in and understood that structures were missing, and teenagers, when they know there are no structures, sometimes will act like teenagers who know there are no structures. Many of them will go to class, mind their business, do their work, and work toward their successes. We have some seniors who are heading off to some powerful institutions after they graduate from Brockton High School, and we can't lose sight of those things. Some of you were here for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. We have students who are academically doing incredible things that match any student around this state. We also have those who need to figure out how to make Brockton High School work for them, and who are distracted by other things for many reasons that negatively influence them now, and will have a horrible impact on them in their futures. And helping them go from that benefit risk thinker to the risk benefit thinker, because their brains are not fully developed, is work every single day. Kids grow up, but it takes time, just like it took us all time to grow up. Structures are being built in, and conditions will change, and the culture will change as we stay consistent in our support of those doing the work here. So is everything perfect? It is not. Are there kids who need more than what we've been able to give them and to be addressed in other ways? Absolutely. And I can tell some of you are going, what about our policies? The policies will work if the structures are right and the resources are there. And so as we look at how we're moving forward, we need to take a deep look into not only policies, because you can write any policy you want. The structure changes from within. So how we support that principal, that leadership team, all of the teachers who need to do the work, that will change this school. And that is where we're headed. And we've had to be very patient and take on many jobs, some of us, to get us there, but we're headed in the right direction. And we need to continue to celebrate the successes we have. As you heard Principal Thomas say, we celebrate every success regardless of your starting point. We had an interesting starting point to Brockton High, but we have a lot of things to celebrate, because there are successes here that we can't lose sight of while we're fixing the things that we know we still need to change.
Any question? Ms. Oliver, please.
I don't have a question, but just a comment. I visit here on Friday with the new principal, and just to see the interaction that he had with the students, it was amazing. It's definitely, I know the policy needs to be followed, but definitely we need to give him time to build that relationship with the students, with the staff. Even watching him, how he relates to the staff and the students, it was amazing. And that's definitely something that I want to see in our new principal, just the building of that relationship, that connection. And this is why we wanted our new principal to be that bridge that we want with our students, with our staff. And I definitely want for him to also build that bridge with the parents, with the residents. And once that connection is built, that relationship is built with our students, with our staff, and with the residents, then we can get the policy in there and get it all situated, but definitely I can see how the students are getting, that relationship and that respect built. It was definitely palpable. Definitely, I can see it, and it was really amazing how the relationship is getting built.
Thank you, Ms. Oliver. Any other Ms. Azak, please?
Thank you. Just to echo what Miss Oliver just stated, a few of us were at the high school on Friday for the senior assembly, and good morning. That's all you heard with Principal McAllister just walking through, and the students were different. Having your principal walk through and acknowledging you, he was popping into classrooms. So I'm excited when he does have an opportunity. He was only in the position for 9 days, so let's give him a little bit of an opportunity before he comes before us. But little by little, we will get there, and I think he's a good fit right now from what I saw on Friday. So the kids are excited. We just got to keep moving forward. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to come up to the high school. For those that haven't met the new principal, it's an eye-opener. I wish he was the principal when I was in school. Even at the award ceremony, he did something that not to point fingers at, other principals, and I actually pointed out to my two new colleagues, he took the time to introduce himself to every single parent that was in that auditorium. And I've never seen a principal do that from all the other award ceremonies that I got. So he's engaging. And then also, Doctor, you had students that were, gravitating to him that they've known him forever. Like, this is my uncle. That's just a real good positive change. And also just, touring the high school with him, there is a lot of changes, a lot of positive changes. I was here when we have over 100 kids. That decreased dramatically. The students in the hallways is decreased dramatically. So there is a lot of progress going on. So I just, want to just share that, there is a lot more positive than negatives that go on. So we always kind of shine light on the negatives, but there is a lot more positive going on. And the district did a phenomenal job of bringing in a great leader, and Mr. McCaskill moving BHS forward to bring it back to #1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Mrs. Sullivan, please.
Thank you for your presentation. But, I've been getting a lot of reports from people, teachers, parents, and one thing that I'm not going to tolerate is children and teachers that are not safe in this building. We have a student handbook with rules and policies that need to be followed. They're being followed in our other schools. Time has come that we need to face the safety of the people in this building. We have had teachers punched, hit. I'm not going to compromise safety. I need to see changes in the safety of this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. Mrs. Ehlers, please.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs and
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Wolder. I happened to be on the phone with Dr. Cobbs the other day, and he just started talking about Brockton High. We were talking about just things in general, and said, we only have one class that's in the cafeteria now. And I said, wait a second, this is great news. This is what everybody needs to hear. They need to hear, to Ms. Sullivan's point, we get all the reports every day about what's gone wrong in the course of a day. But when Dr. Cobb said that to me on the phone, I said, wait a second, 2 months ago, we were dealing with 300 to 400 students sitting in the cafeteria because we didn't have teachers. And now we're talking about one, and we have a brand new great principal, and there aren't students in the hallways. And that we need to be shouting out. That is evolution from the 1st of September when we, opened up this school year to an absolute mess. And we are now finally, using your words, finding our sea legs to be able to, level set the field. And so I, thank you very much, Dr. Cobbs and Ms. Wolder, for sharing with us, because there are a lot of good things that are starting to happen. And, good things breed good things. And so let's just keep the good work happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Oliver, please.
I don't think anyone wants to minimize the safety of anybody. I don't think any of us wants any teachers or to be beaten. I'm a parent. I would never want another child to attack a teacher. I will never condone that. But we need to also allow the outsiders or the enterprise, if they want to, always focus on a negative, we need to start focusing on the positive and highlight the positive. Let the outsiders outside of Brockton and enterprise focus on the negative. Right now, we need to focus on what's happening, the positive. Of course, we want the teachers to be safe. We need our students to be safe, but at times we need to start highlighting the positive. And right now, if we have only one class in the cafeteria, we need to applaud that. We need to applaud the fact that we have teachers coming into school and teaching and want to be present in the classroom and being an educator. We had 28 teachers being at home. Now we only have 8. We need to applaud that. We need to be proud that teachers wants to come and educate our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Mr. Gomes, please.
So in most situations, whether it's school, home, business, organization, events, we tend to always focus on the negative. Even when there's something good still going on, we always focus on the negative. It happens every here and there, and it gets highlighted the most, and everybody gets to see it. I think I can say I'm the most recent Brockton High graduate. And coming back, so we went to go visit Friday after the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship. And it was because of the excitement of the students with the new principal, the parents coming. Some of us had the opportunity to be there, to speak with a lot of the students, the parents, and seeing that relationship, seeing that build up. We were excited. We wanted to go to Brockton, to come here and visit and see what's going on, how the students are doing, how the new principal is doing. And coming in, it's a big change. Like some of them already said, the hallways it was moving smoothly. Compared to when I was in school, you had to wiggle around to make room. The students, it's good morning all around, saying hi, the excitement, seeing the new principal, and the way they were greeting us coming in is just amazing. And it's like you said, we need to focus on some of the goods. Seeing the students getting the award as well was exciting. I got the award when I was in school, and seeing them and giving a speech to them was a pleasure, honestly. And we need to highlight these achievements. We need to come to these students and tell them, congratulations, you did well. And change always takes time. And even when you implement it and you're forcing the implementation, some students will receive it well, some staff will receive it well, but not everybody will comply at the same time. So we gotta give it time, we gotta work with them at their own pace, we gotta build that relationship, and then we'll have a better working environment. But thank you guys for all the work. It's been an amazing change.
Thank you, Mr. Gomes. Ms. Azak, followed by Mr. Sullivan, please.
Thank you. So my colleagues have made some pretty good statements tonight. So we do need to celebrate the positive. And we also need to remember, safety is one of our top priorities. I mean, that's just a known fact. But, and I think I called him Principal McAllister, but it's Principal McCaskill, and I apologize. McCaskill. And he's only been there 9 days. And we've seen a positive change. And we need to give our students stability. This is a third principal, and we're halfway through the year. It wasn't an overnight change. It took years to get where we are. It's going to take us a little bit of time to work on our safety and work on other areas as far as Brockton High. So it's not going to be an overnight fix. And I know we're doing the best that we can to try to make it safer for our students, our staff. But I just want to make that statement. It wasn't an overnight, all of a sudden we have a problem. This has been years in the making. So we're working, and I just appreciate everything that everyone's doing at Brockton High. But thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Azak. Mr. Sullivan, followed by Mrs. Sullivan, please.
Yes, Dr. Cobbs and Deputy Walder, I just wanted to thank you. Great job for bringing 200 to 300 students in the lunchroom down to one class. That's almost unbelievable. It was, I went up to the high school, I'm going to say about a month and a half ago, and it was kind of scary to walk through. There were so many people walking around, so many people sitting in the lunchroom, but it was a great job to have just one class Thank you. You did it. You did it.
Mrs. Sullivan, please.
Yes, all of that is great, and I'm always celebrating the positives. But we have a real problem here. We have our teachers being attacked and punched by students. And that's also your job as a school committee member, to make sure that's taken care of. Thank you.
So can I,
Ms. Walder, of course.
to your colleagues, but I want you to hear and everyone else to hear, when a student does something like that, there is discipline, and they have a right to due process, but there is also discipline. It could be a long-term suspension. It could be criminal charges, depending upon what the teacher decides to do. But please don't assume that because we're saying good things are happening, that we are not addressing the very negative things that we know we have to address, and that we have, which is part of the reason why we had the attorney come and share with you Chapter 222 and the process that a school system has to go through in order to address discipline, because it has changed. It is no longer zero tolerance. It is the students' rights are protected, and we have a responsibility to ensure they're educated regardless of their behavior. And so that is part of the work that we as a school system have to do. But please don't assume that we are finally being able to say, yay, Brockton High, some good things are happening, that means we're turning our back on the things that people are still most concerned about, which obviously is safety.
Any additional comments at this time? I just want to say, and I was joined by Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Oliver, and Mr. Gomes, and Mr. Gomes did an unbelievable keynote for the Abigail and John Adams scholarships. And we want to congratulate, of course, all the scholarship recipients, but also the band. I mean, they set the tone, right? They came in marching. You thought it was a Notre Dame fight song coming in, right? It was unbelievable. But I also want to just let you know on a personal note, it was my impressions of Mr. McCaskill was he truly gets it. He stood on stage with us and we shook everybody's hand. He kept saying, smile, how you doing? He's starting to know people's names. But on a side note, I met with President DePasquale of Massasoit, Ray DePasquale, the other day. We had a coffee, and he said it was a good hire. They knew each other from Springfield, and his quotes were, he relates to kids, he was a heck of a basketball coach, and he truly cares. So Ray used to be the Commissioner of Education in Rhode Island, so he truly understands education. So we look forward to working with everybody. I do want to thank Ms. Wolder and Dr. Cobbs, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mulder. So the next thing on the agenda is the update from City Chief Financial Officer Troy Clarkson. I'm sorry, introduction update with TJ Plant, Open Architects.
So Mr. Plant, again, for the new members, Mr. Plant, TJ Plant, works for a company called Open Architects. They are being paid by DESE. Commissioner Riley, we're very thankful for Commissioner Riley and DESE. Mr. Plant lives in Springfield, Massachusetts, so he didn't travel here today because of the weather, but he will be joining us by Zoom. And of course, thank you, Troy, for being here as well.
So Troy, I don't know if you want me to kick it off, just kind of a background so everyone kind of understands, or Mr. Chairman, to the members, I can probably just give you a quick background of what Open Architects is as a company and kind of how we came to be in Brockton. So I recently left Springfield about 4 months ago now, roughly, to go work with Open Architects. Open Architects is a company that focuses on data analytics for mostly school systems, but then they discovered that there was a kind of a need for some financial oversight and financial consulting work that kind of got into. So I've got almost 17 years in Springfield as their Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, their school CFO. I'm a licensed school business administrator. So Seth Racine, the founder and CEO of the company, reached out to me and said, we have some needs in Brockton. Are you interested in coming to help Brockton do some, FY24 planning, FY25 planning, and beyond? And immediately we're like, you know what, this sounds like it makes sense, and we're going to do it. We have a contract with DESE. DESE, as the chairman and Dr. Cobb said, is contracted with us to kind of come in and just be like an independent set of eyes. We're not looking necessarily retrospectively. That's for the audit. That's for the others that are doing the investigation. We're here just to kind of help clean it up, build the budget process, fix things as we find them, and kind of go down that road. Scope of work really was for fiscal 24, 25, and 26. I think as this committee has recognized and come to understand, is way more complex than I probably would have ever even imagined. And I will go through some of that with the committee, but I also want to leave time for questions. And Troy, if you need to interject anywhere, just let me know, but I'll just start going through stuff if that's okay. So the first challenge out of the gate, the budget that was adopted by the school committee and the budget that was adopted by the city council did not match in Munis. And that is kind of a fundamental problem just because you don't know which actually is the system of record. And I understand we didn't make a change as a community in Brockton because of the fact that we needed to kind of dig into, figure out what is actually going on in terms of the budget deficit that we had. So the budget didn't match. I'll get into transportation. I'll get it. I don't know if you're familiar with the chart of accounts. Chart of accounts is your accounting system that says, okay, here's where things are paid from. Normally they tie out in a very logical way to the DESI codes. Brockton's chart of accounts didn't really seem to have a logic. They were kind of, I don't know if messy is the right word, but it just, for those of us coming in from the outside, they didn't follow the logic that typical chart of accounts would. We had a lot of issues trying to do a payroll projection because the payroll locations don't seem to be accurate based upon the process by which people are onboarded through HR and payroll, that the location codes that is very important for running a payroll didn't seem to be as accurate as we hoped it would be. So thank you, Dr. Cobbs and your team for helping us start the roster review to make sure we get all the people that are dedicated to a school. I guess I'll give an example so to kind of hit home. If somebody works at the middle school and they move to the high school, their location may stay at the middle school, therefore their salary is paid from the middle school. So we're not getting an accurate representation of what the cost center is by location. And our goal collectively has been to present to the school committee kind of a updated budget that reimagines the cost centers as accurate as they can be, so the principals can be the CEOs of their buildings and have some ownership over it. So we're doing that roster review now. We're doing the roster review beyond just schools. We're doing it for all departments now. And that we're working on that. So that'll give us an accurate sense of where all the payroll locations should be to make sure that every employee that is assigned to a building is being charged to that building, to then give us the numbers to be able to build up, Brockton High School's budget and make sure it's as accurate as possible for Kevin McCaskill to be able to be the CEO of it. Grants have been a major problem. You probably heard a little bit about grants. There's been a lot of things going on with grants that we are reconciling one by one. Trish Boyer that just got hired, her and I have been working hand in hand trying to get a process in place to make sure that all the grants employees that are charged to a grant are actually on the grant, not on the general fund, which would save money. But we also have a problem with grants as it relates to payroll is still hitting expired grants. And we're working on a process to clean that up. And that has been a challenge only because the grants have been closed out and the line items in Munis have never been deactivated. And if you're familiar with Munis, the accounting system, if it's an active account, payroll is always going to hit. Unless you deactivate it, then it'll ping payroll to figure out where that person should be paid from. And so there's a number of folks still being paid for by expired grants as it relates to that. We're looking to create what I call a suspense account, which is just kind of get everybody off those expired grants, get them onto an account, and then find out where they belong. In addition, we're also reconciling the grants. So if there's a deficit in one account because of the payroll, like entitlement grants are 27-month grants, so you can theoretically roll them over each year to satisfy the deficit and try to make sure that we're, you know, maximizing every dollar for the Brockton students. But there's about 30 grants that need to be reconciled. We're well underway of filing the end of year, or the FR1s is what they're called, the financial records, the financial reports, with DESE. I think you've heard a lot about Circuit Breaker. Circuit Breaker has been a tremendous challenge for Brockton, and I would actually say more so out of district placements that have swelled enough that's causing some strain on the budget. I know there's been 3.9 roughly of a deficit in Circuit Breaker. It is my understanding that 20 students were moved from in-district to out-of-district based upon their needs, the IEPs and all that, which is all well and good, but this committee should have been informed that the fiscal implications of that could have been in the millions of dollars. And that is, in my estimation, where the $3.9 million deficit started to come from. That was extinguished by the city council a couple weeks ago. Transportation, that budget is something we're watching very closely because transportation is operating without a formal budget. And I haven't looked at the latest numbers, but I'm guessing transportation spending is around $9 million already when the budget's technically $11.2 million. Now that is not in and of itself, it sounds worse than it may be because we have to now look at the Circuit Breaker. Brockton stands to get about $7.1 million in the Circuit Breaker, which helps offset out-of-district expensive costs and transportation costs to get our students to and from their programs and or residential placements. Revolving accounts, we have a number of revolving accounts that don't revolve. Community schools being one of them, they don't really have a budget that they've been operating with. And not having revenue come in to support the program is not necessarily a big deal, but in my estimation, it should be a policy decision by the school committee to say, we're not going to charge for basketball, we're not going to charge for aquatics, we're not going to charge for whatever, because we want our kids to have access to this. Instead, it just is running deficits that just get covered through different accounts. And my final piece of it that is somewhat baffling, and I don't know if anyone's heard of the 199 account. That is the account that a lot of the revenue has been, or the budget we've been loaded into and then moved out over time. At one point, there was practically the entire budget moved into the 199 account and then moved out to other locations and schools and other areas. I've never seen that before, never heard of it before. I don't understand. I mean, the accounting of it is really, if anything comes up, it goes to the 199 account. And that is including other than base pay, class coverage, overtime. Like, if it's not assigned to a grant or assigned anywhere directly, the default is this 199 account, which is something that I've had a challenge reconciling. So, long story short, before I open it up for questions, we are getting close to having a projection, but there are a lot of moving pieces. We're still identifying revenue that belongs to the school department and some different accounts that we've been running through Munis. So I don't want to sit here and raise the alarm bells and say, you know, the sky is falling, but I also want to make sure we do our due diligence. So when we sit down as a committee, as a group, and go through all the numbers, this body understands exactly what we're looking to do for both fiscal 24, and then ultimately we got to dive right into fiscal 25. The governor's budget's coming out next week, and we're gonna, you know, have to really start looking at that soon. I don't know, Dr. Cobbs, if I missed anything. I don't know, Troy, if I missed anything, but I'm happy to take questions. I know you guys probably have a bunch of them.
You want to jump in, Troy?
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I think, as I've been sharing with you, as I've attended these meetings, both the city financial staff, the school financial team have worked very closely with TJ since their consultancy began. And I think he just encapsulated for you in a few minutes what I've shared with you on a regular basis, and that is what we share with you in that report that I emailed to you yesterday is the best information we have, and those trends are promising. The challenge is we're still looking at wading through other accounts to make sure that we can make an accurate projection for you for fiscal year '24. And as importantly, build a budget that's balanced and responsive to your priorities for fiscal year '25. So I can say that Open Architects and TJ in particular have been indispensable partners. I want to thank the school committee and the administration for bringing Trish Boyer on board. She has already become a very valued member of the team, and as TJ mentioned, dove right in to try to reconcile some of those grants. The financial staff for the Brockton Public Schools is a bit depleted, so having her expertise and dedication has been phenomenal. So I'd prefer to yield my time to allow for a dialogue and for the committee members to ask some questions. But I did want to add just a couple of things to what TJ said to stimulate the discussion. One of my first appearances here, we talked about transportation and about how that was trending. And we said that we should have a separate discussion. And Dr. Cobbs and I discussed that today. So I'm going to suggest again that we have an agenda item some night dedicated to transportation costs so that we can really dig into those numbers and show you where those costs are, where there might be some relief from some of the circuit breaker funds so that we can really, so that you can get a comfort level that you understand what those transportation costs are and how they're trending. I did want to just very briefly address an issue that Member Sullivan mentioned a little while ago about vendors. And so we have dual challenges in going back to try to analyze how the business of the Brockton Public Schools was conducted and how we can improve it. And the issues were not only financial, but in some ways structural to how business was conducted. And so some of those issues do exist with vendors, but I think the issue is less about cash flow, because there are sufficient funds to pay some of those outstanding bills, but it's more about the process that was followed and ensuring with the support of the city law department that proper procurement procedures were followed, that there aren't, as we mentioned, about leases, that some procurements require the engagement of the city council. So we're having to be very deliberate in looking at the arrangements, the business arrangements that Brockton Public Schools has with a variety of vendors, and ensuring that those arrangements were procured properly and that they were engaged legally. So that is taking some time, and ultimately our job is to protect the city, the schools, and the school committee, and ensuring that we're doing things properly. And so we continue to do that on a daily basis. TJ's involved in those discussions. So just very briefly on the report, the trends continue to be positive. We're 54.4% through the year, and at least in the general fund, the spending is trending about 10% below that. We discussed this with Dr. Cobbs today, and he wants to redirect some of those resources to make sure we're fulfilling the educational needs. I think, as TJ mentioned, Open Architects, in fairly short order, will have a projection that looks at those numbers, but then brings in some of the grant and revolving fund issues that will eat up some of that money. So I think some of the controls that we've put in place have had a very positive impact. We've streamlined the hiring process so that we can address some of the teacher shortages that were talked about a few minutes ago. So I think that's something very positive that's come out of this collaboration. But in general, we're working tirelessly every day to to try to shine a light on the business of the Brockton Public Schools and to do that in a way that you can be responsive to your constituents. So with that, I'll turn it back to TJ and happy to answer collectively any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Plant. Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. I open it up to the committee now. Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clarkson. I appreciate everything you're doing, and I know we spoke before the meeting, but I'm just not sure who else on the committee had a chance to take a look at the finance report. I saw it today, and it's 37 or 47 pages, and it's not easy to look at it on my phone when I didn't have any heads up. Can we add Mrs. Campbell at the superintendent's office, if that's okay with Mrs. Campbell, when she prepares the packets? I don't think the numbers changed that much from Friday to today. And if we can get them printed and in our packets, that way we can review them. We have a few days to review them. A lot of us work full-time. I know I was trying to take a look at them on my phone. I'm not sure who else had a chance to even know that they were in their email, let alone look at them. So, and I know you're doing the best that you can because you're on the city side and your school side, so I don't mean to be disrespectful, but how can I ask questions when I haven't even seen the paperwork? And when I tried looking at it around 3 o'clock this afternoon, when I realized it was in there, as I'm sifting through all the other emails that we have. So can we just request, I thought we requested it before, but rather than have your office, if we can have a contact person, get us these packets or whatever paperwork needs to be printed out and then give them to the superintendent's office. Emailing us directly is fine. That's easier than waiting for acting superintendent to forward it to all of us. But 37 pages on my little droid, I couldn't see half the stuff. I just don't know if any other committee members ran into the same issue or even knew that they were in their emails. Yeah, I mean, some people, I was working, so unfortunately, I tried looking before, and I didn't have my laptop to look at it, let alone print it out, in between appointments to try to get here for 6 p.m. So can we request that we get them in our packets? I don't see the numbers changing, and if they do, it shouldn't be that huge of a difference from, say, Thursday, by the time she gets them, prints them, and adds them to our packet, like other material that we get ahead of time.
I can certainly answer that, because we've talked about it, and I think how we provide this information to you has evolved since the city team began their collaboration with the schools. And it's always, with this information, because it updates on a daily basis, it's a balance between getting it timely and having it up to date. We can provide the report to Melinda by the packet deadline, and these reports will be in your packet. Absolutely, we can do that. The trade-off is when you get it or when you discuss it at this meeting, it will be several days old. But if the committee is okay with that, then most certainly we can do it that way. As I said, we've tried to balance the desire to get you the most timely and up-to-date information with what's understandably your desire to also be able to absorb it and understand it and have a dialogue. So if perhaps, Mr. Chair, if there's a consensus from the committee to have it provided in the packet, then we can certainly do that.
What's the will of the committee? Would you like to, Ms. Oliver, please? Okay.
Yeah, if you could, because it's just like how Ms. Azak said, because I would like it, I'm busy too, I'm working, so I would like it a more visual person so I can look at it and, write if I need to do some questions that I have.
Thank you. Mr. Gomes, please.
I agree, because I did see it yesterday, but I was working as well, so I didn't have time to review it. But if we get it on Friday with the packet, we can have the weekend to look it over. Even, I know it will be at least 3 to 4 days. Missing 3-4 days of updates, we can get in the following week.
Okay. Great. So I'll work with Melinda and make sure that the update reports get into your packets.
Mrs. Sullivan, you had a comment?
I just wanted to say thank you, Troy, for all you do. You've been awesome.
Thank you. Mrs. Ehlers, please.
So I don't have a problem. I saw the information when you emailed it to us. That's fine. Whether we want to do paper packets or not, I'm fine with that. My question is actually for TJ. So in regards to The only way I keep feeling about what you came into is that it was a complete mess. And so I guess my feeling is we've had the same individuals, and I don't want to talk out of turn, but we've had the same individuals managing that finance office for years. And I'm not saying they managed it wrong or right, but clearly there was a huge deficit that came out of it. Would you say that the way that we have been managing this department in the past has been sloppy or negligent? I just feel like you're digging for gold trying to figure out what's really going on. And am I being accurate or inaccurate? I guess I'm thinking of your thoughts, because this 199 thing that you had never heard about, and now we're hearing about it for the first time. It just, has this been a product of like just, I hate to put it this way, but you could go to new companies and you hear them say all the time, well, we've always done it this way, or we've always done it this way. Is this a product of that? Mismanagement, laziness, sloppiness? I guess I'm just curious, as an accountant, what your perception of it is.
It's an excellent question. So I don't want to, cast aspersions on decisions that were made prior to me walking in the door on September 25th. Having said that, I have not seen, I think a reorganization is necessary, and a training of the staff. So I think what you've seen come out of this after is you have grant folks and budget folks or analysts and accountants that were not adequately trained to do their roles and responsibilities in order to support the organization.
So would you say once they're trained, we would still require the same number of individuals in that department? Or if we had properly trained individuals, we would actually have less people but more, say, subject matter experts?
I don't know yet. I'm working on kind of a reorganization kind of model in my mind of what to recommend to Dr. Cobbs, the mayor, and ultimately you, the school committee. There is definitely a setup that could be way more beneficial to all the schools, especially if you're empowering the school principals who, from what I understand, haven't had the power in recent years, that they may have been involved in the budget process, but in recent years they weren't, because that's going to be really the piece of it that's going to make this all work and help Brockton kind of grow, if that makes any sense. So, like, we're going into the model of every department has a budget, which is not the case now, which, the budgets do not match. So if you talk to the special education department, they don't have a formal budget. And that is dangerous in the sense of spending, because that's where the costs are. And if you're not tracking it, then you have a problem. Transportation's the second one. The community school is the third one. All three of them don't have formal budgets. And so it has been, and they want one. All the department heads that run those departments all want one. They just have never been given one recently. And that is what we're trying to deliver to them. And to know what it costs to run each school is important. Even if all the bills aren't paid out of the school, they're paid centrally or whatever. Just knowing all your cost centers and having you as a school committee heavily involved in the votes and the moving of money. The fact that money got moved without this body at least being made aware is troublesome to me.
Thank you for saying that, Mr. Plant. I actually do appreciate that. The other second part of my question is, what do you think the ETA is on when you'd be able to present something to this committee that you would recommend? Because I feel like I can speak for my colleagues in the fact that these are questions every single one of us at this table have asked in separate meetings, whether it's accounts review or finance, and we've always felt that you shouldn't have to be an accountant to go to an accounts review meeting and figure out what's going on for spending or non-spending. And so I would like to be able to assume that myself and my colleagues, when this is all said and done, that the budget we receive or the template for the way we handle a budget is completely transparent, and that it's very easy for us to track which departments are either overspending, underspending, and that those the proper decisions can be made with this group the way they should be. Yes?
I agree with you that all the major decision points should be brought to the school committee to make it an informed decision on everything from, I know we're talking about the Huntington School earlier, we're talking about some of the other areas, like all of those should be costed out. I know Dr. Cobbs is working on that, and that's, all these things, you need to know the fiscal ramifications of every decision that's being made. And if you're, moving 20 students from in-district to out-of-district placement, you should see a budget related to what that's going to cost. And then if there's offsets to circuit breaker, you should see that as well. To answer the question related to the surplus deficit kind of projection, it changes daily. There's a lot of assumptions that I need. Like I know Dr. Cobb said to me today, me and Troy, we're 6.5 months into the fiscal year. What the hell's going on? Sorry. And he's like, we need to know because I don't want to leave a penny on the table. And we agree with you. I said, there's so much fluctuation that it's tough because, we're reconciling these grants and the grants could have a major swing and cost the city money in free cash or a major swing and save the city general fund. And that's how much this is shifting almost on a daily basis.
I'd like to just follow up and add to TJ's answer and speak about Open Architects and TJ in this process because their deliverable to DESE is an FY24 budget projection. There are things that we're talking about right now that I believe will require significant additional support on top of the team that we have internally in place. And so at some point, we're going to need to have a discussion about the city, the school department engaging Open Architects once their work for DESE is complete. There's a ton of work to do, as I've been talking to you about, in constructing an FY25 budget that not only meets your policy guidelines, but has the sort of structure and transparency that you can go online or ask someone on a daily basis and get updates. So this Open Architects contract with DESE is nearly complete, but I would say our collective work is just beginning. And I just wanted to put that out there now so that when we have discussions about how they're going to fit into the team in the future, that we had this initial discussion tonight and you were aware of it.
I think one of the reasons I was getting at the number of staffing in the department is that if we can keep a moderate amount of people in the department but continue to use Open Architects as a consultant just so that we want to lock down fiscal year 24, but if they can get us prepped for fiscal year 25 so that we're on the straight and narrow, and they're in the weeds now, I would rather keep them there because they're in the thick of it, and now we have the auditing firm coming in. So I'm throwing that out there because as opposed to hiring another full-timer in the finance division, it might be something for us to continue to keep TJ on this until we come full circle with the next 2 years and making sure that we have a really good plan. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for either Mr. Plan or Mr. Clarkson at this time? Mr. Plan, I just want to thank you for your dedication. You and I have a weekly meeting. You meet with Dr. Cobbs and Troy more than that. So we'll continue to listen and learn from you, and we truly appreciate your time this evening.
Appreciate it. Urban education's hugely important, so keep up the good work, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, Troy. We will now go on to D of the report of the superintendent of schools, which is items to refer to subcommittee. Are there any matters to go to subcommittee tonight?
Yes, Mayor. 2 items I'd like to refer to subcommittee. One is the policy subcommittee regarding the cell phone policy.
Okay. Any other matter?
Second will be the transportation subcommittee.
Dr. Cobbs, do you think we'll need 2 hours for the facilities meeting on the 13th, or do you think we can add policy and transportation, or should we bump that to a different Tuesday?
A different Tuesday, I would think. I think the 27th may be
Okay.
a good date.
We can put cell phone and transportation on the
Right.
27th.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Cobbs. That concludes Agenda Item 4. Now, we will go back to Agenda Item 3, which is the MASC training role of the school committee. And I know that the representative from MASC is here this evening. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, all. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Tracy Novick. I'm among the field directors with the Mass Association of School Committees. I know you had my colleague Jim Hardy with you last week, as well as our executive director, Glenn Kuchar. Those of you who have been through charting the course, which I think is most of you at this point, possibly all of you, some of this is going to seem familiar, but one of the things that we actually think is a really good practice for school committees is to get to hear things together, get to agree together on exactly what your role is, what the role of the superintendent is, and also it's always we find beneficial for districts to hear alongside their school committee what the role of the school committee is, because you all hearing it from us on a Saturday with lots of your colleagues from across the state is great, but it's also good for your community to know what your job is as well. So this is, of course, reformatted a little bit for Brockton in your Brockton Red. Just as a reminder, there are very strict purviews of the school committee in Massachusetts under Chapter 71 largely, which is setting goals for the district, district policy, as you just were talking about this evening, the hiring of the superintendent, evaluation of the superintendent, collective bargaining is under the purview of the school committee, and then of course budgeting, as you also were just talking about. Now, something that we think it's always important to stress is there's actually a decent amount of research as to what it is that makes for successful school boards and school committees. This is actually information that was put together by the National School Boards Association, done by some of our colleagues out of Iowa. And some of the things that they've found that successful school committees share is they have a shared sense of vision for the district, the direction the district is moving in, and they are the ones who are setting that vision for the district. They are accountable not only to their community, but also to each other, making sure that they're actually staying on track in terms of what their job is. They work to create and sustain relationships. And again, this is something where you're not only talking about relationships with your community, but also relationships with each other, and then also with the administration. As some of you might remember, your code of ethics actually sets that sort of three-way responsibility to the community, to the administration, and to one another as members of the common committee. Using data in ways that are constructive, that inform you in your decision making, and allow you to make good decisions for the district and the future of the district. Work collaboratively, and saying that you are also a deliberative body. It is not uncommon and frankly not even unusual for there to be disagreements, but at the end of the day there are decisions that are made and then you move forward as a body collectively. And a shared sense of trust both among the body and collectively with the superintendent. There is that necessary relationship among the pieces of the governance body so that you're working together in the same direction, and similarly a mutual sense of respect. Now this may look familiar. This is our Venn diagram of whose job is what. We find that people understand information in different kinds of ways, so we can give you lists or we can give you words. Some people see things better when they're looking at it in terms of a diagram. But the superintendent is the one who's doing the day-to-day management of the district, looking at what is actually happening from one day to the next, and overseeing and managing all of that. The more far-seeing, long-term governance of the district is under the purview of the school committee. When you're talking about the superintendent, you're talking about means and methods. The school committee should be looking at the ends, at the results, the mission, the vision, the goals, the policy, whereas essentially that enactment of those things, the strategies, the action plans, the regulations, and the procedures are under the purview of the superintendent. As a general rule, though they are general rules, if it is the answer to a question that is what, why, or how much, it is probably under the purview of the school committee. If it is the answer to the questions how, who, when, or where, it is probably under the purview of the superintendent. Please note the words probably. Those are not hard and fast rules. Generally speaking, the school committee acts as a bridge between the community and the superintendent and the larger administration, while the superintendent should be acting as a bridge between the staff and the committee. And then down here at the bottom, most of the decisions that you make, and in fact, you actually just sort of set a couple of those up with the recommendations you were getting from the superintendent, many of your decisions will start with a recommendation from the administration. It then moves back over to the committee where you will have a deliberation and you will make a vote. You will authorize something. It then goes back over to the administration for implementation. You then are in the ones who are monitoring that decision. So you just sent what sounded like a couple of policies, for example, off to a deliberation. Once you make that decision, they'll move back to administration for the implementation. You then will have a monitoring role. If there becomes a need for any of those things to be updated, the same thing will happen. That is also how your budget works. That's how policy works, generally how goals work. So most of the things that you do have this sort of handoff back and forth with the administration. Now, there's two things I would add to this. The first is that I mentioned earlier the notions of trust and respect. There's a couple of things here that are not hard and fast, clean cut, easy answers in terms of this is your job and this is the administration's job. There also are places in which obviously it's necessary for there to be a communication back and forth. There being a professional trust and a respect between the members of the school committee and the administration is really crucial in order to make all of this work. And it is those relationships that enable then the community trust to happen, that these clean back and forth handoffs are happening, that those conversations and deliberations are happening in public, and that it is clear that there is a sense of whose job is which, and that those handoffs are happening in ways that are clear and are keeping things that are under people's purview, and that the work is being done in that fashion. Now, similarly, and I mention this because you have a couple of new members, but also, you know, it wasn't that long ago that you just went through an election. There is a distinction between what you as an individual have a responsibility for and to versus what happens with the committee. So as an individual member of this body, except for authorities that are essentially designated to you by the body or by the municipal charter, no single member has authority beyond any other member. You do not actually have authority outside of the body when you are meeting in a posted public session. One of the ways that I have heard this well described by one of my colleagues from another state is, we talk about senators, we talk about representatives, we talk about council members. We talk about counselors, I should say. There is no word for a school committee member, save that you are a member of the body. That is your role, that is how you function. And so that's an important thing to know. You do contribute to the goals, to the vision, to the work of the district, asking critical questions, as you just were doing earlier, supporting committee decisions, and being dedicated to the work on behalf of the students. Now, when you are meeting together as a body, you do have official legislative power as the district, essentially the district legal body in a properly posted meeting. You do govern the district through policy, through budgetary decisions, through your goal setting. Meeting in public, having the public comment like you do and other means by which you gather public input is part of engaging the community. You do have a responsibility as a committee to be continuing to sustain that relationship with the superintendent and with the administration. And of course, you're the employer of record for the purposes of collective bargaining, which is another sort of separate responsibility that you have, though you are not the ones who are doing the analysis and the assessment of individual members beyond the superintendent. And similarly, again, the idea here, though, is that you are working as a team. You're working as a governance body. And that notion of you as contributing to the greater whole as a member of the school committee is actually really crucial. Now, I've been playing a bit with trying to figure out the best way of sort of envisioning this or putting this together. I do think it's really, really important for members of school committees to understand that you have these 5 areas or 4 areas, depending on how you count them, that are yours. But none of them sort of exist in isolation. All of the areas that you have that are under your purview are connected to the other areas that you have. So for example, I manage school finance for MASC. One of the things I always really stress when we talk about budgeting is that your budget needs to support your district goals. It can't just be sort of, you spent some money, you employed teachers, you kept the schools open. You are actually spending money in a way that supports your district going in a particular kind of direction. The policy purview that you have as a school committee often is related to goals that you may set as a district. It often is related, in some cases, to particular kinds of evaluations you may be doing with the superintendent. So in every, obviously collective bargaining has policy implications and budgetary implications. In every case, all of the responsibilities that you have as a body should be things that you see as mutually supporting each other and mutually connecting to each other. They really are not things that exist in isolation. If I actually put an arrow between every single one, though, this would get kind of messy. So you have to kind of imagine that part. To quickly go through each of these, although I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the financial section, as you might expect, at the end. In terms of goal setting, this is just coming out of what I think of as kind of the elevator speech version of what school committees do in Massachusetts, which is MGL Chapter 71, Section 37. Establishing educational goals is right there in the what is it that a school committee does in Massachusetts. And the reason that you set goals is because that's actually how you lead the district. You say, okay, this is the direction that we're heading in. It's also important that you set goals because somebody is going to set goals. They may be doing it formally, they may be doing it informally, and if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it for you. So it is important that the committee actually do it and do it formally, do it in public, do it as part of your other responsibilities. It also does enable everybody to be focused and actually know where you're going in terms of what are we working on. You had some great examples of that earlier this evening in terms of what your schools are doing. But as you'll see in a minute, the work of the schools actually builds off of the work of the district. And then finally, this is one of the ways in which you demonstrate to the community that there is a path forward. There are things that you're particularly focusing on. There are things that are the work of the district, the work of the committee in terms of improving things. So we think about goals in terms of really this sort of pyramid session, which is that the district goals underlie goals of the superintendent, if the committee sets goals, and also the school improvement plans, what's the SAP here. And then those in turn build, the administrator goals build on that, and then teacher goals build on top of that. If I can get the next level of my pyramid, there we go. And then of course, all of this, as you know from all of the training that you've gotten, is always focused on student achievement, as defined by the community. So that you essentially are the foundation of all of the rest of this being built. So it's obviously crucial for the committee to be coming together to say, here are the ways that, here are the places we're focusing on, here are the things that we're moving forward on. In terms of policy, this is the same section, right? Policies for the schools in the district consistent with the requirements of the law and statewide goals and standards. Policy often is essentially an intervening layer. State passes laws, the state puts together regulations, federal government passes laws. You are the place where what does that actually mean for your school district gets written down. That's what those policies are. Policy is the what and the why of the governance, whereas administration then will put into practice procedures, which is how does this work itself out. And that sort of granular work of what does the language look like of policy is part of the nitty-gritty, quite literally, of the school committee. And then the sort of smooth handoff to the administration to put things together in terms of then what does this actually end up looking like in the classroom, in the hallways, in the school district schools. Now, district policy is within the policy manual, but it's also in a lot of other places within the district. I'm not going to read you the whole list here, but really any of the places that you're putting together language that governs how the district runs, those are places that policy lies. You can see it in collective bargaining agreements, any agreements that you have outside of that, legal documents that are filed for you by council. Oftentimes there's policy implications of receiving grants, goals, objectives, missions, and then something that we always say is the most important policy document that you consider every year is your budget, because you certainly are making budget, you're certainly making policy decisions when you put together your budget. Now, in terms of personnel, there's really kind of two realms within personnel that are under the purview of the school committee. The first, of course, is the employment of the superintendent, and that is absolutely the hiring of the superintendent, and then the evaluation of the superintendent is under the purview of the school committee. There are a couple of other things that are also under the purview. The hiring and the retention of district legal counsel is under the purview of the school committee. District legal counsel works for the school committee, does not work for the superintendent, does not work for the chair, works for the school committee as a body. That's actually a retained authority, dates back before education reform. You are, of course, the employer of record for the purposes of collective bargaining. That means that your collective bargaining units bargain with you as a body. They don't bargain with the superintendent. You may decide to empower the superintendent to be part of your bargaining team or to bargain on your behalf, but it's the school committee that the contract is with. You do not oversee your school business official, but the contract of your school business official is with the school committee. This school business official is actually in the same section of Mass General Law as the superintendent. So that's an important sort of detail. I would say that that is a recognition of the importance of that relationship and also the authority and oversight of the budget of the school committee. So there's a slight distinction in that relationship as opposed to assistant superintendent, director of special education, and some of these other positions, physicians, nurses, attendance officers, on which you have advise and consent. And if you get into the nitty-gritties of those, and some of you may have seen this in the past, generally what happens is there's a recommendation that's brought to the school committee by the superintendent, and there is a section of the law that's pretty specific in terms of if the school committee objects to the hiring, you have to be particularly specific as to why. So it really is an advise and consent in terms of the superintendent is bringing the best recommendation forward possible. The contract then is with the superintendent. Evaluation then is also with the superintendent. And then in terms of the work of the superintendent does function as a chief executive officer of the school district and manages all district personnel. So essentially once those hires happen, those are then all under the purview of the superintendent, even if the contracts initially are with the school committee. And then in terms of budget, so there's really sort of a couple of things I could cite here for budget, but I do always think it's important to emphasize that the vote of the legislative body of a city or town establishes the total appropriation. The school committee then establishes the expenditures within that total appropriation. So that is the division of the authority in terms of the school budget. And then to get into sort of what else happens, right? Because the old joke at MASC used to be that there are 5 seasons of the year, right? Winter, spring, summer, fall, and budget. I have now changed that to say, no, actually budget lasts all of the seasons of the year. And those who actually live in finance offices know that, there's at least 6 months of the year that you're putting budgets together and you're always allocating budgets and overseeing budgets, but that is also the job of the school committee. So you do have some authorities that don't necessarily have to do with the sort of dollars and cents piece. There is an entire section of your policy manual that has to do with fiscal policies. What are the processes? What are the ramifications of the laws under which you spend money? You do have the business officer appointment. That is part of your job. And I would also note, of course, that the spending of the day-to-day budget is also done by the superintendent. So the appointment of the superintendent is really also a part of that appointment. Collective bargaining, obviously your biggest expense, and this is true of every school committee, certainly in Massachusetts, and I believe probably everywhere in the country. Your largest expense is people, because that's what we do. We have people who teach children and who clean buildings and who drive buses and all of the rest of it. Your collective bargaining agreement is obviously part of your budgetary and fiduciary responsibility. And then monitoring over the course of the year. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on the next slide or two. But I do always think it's really important, as much as once you've raised your hand and passed your allocation, once the municipal side has passed their bottom line allocation, to remember that as much as we can sort of all then take a deep breath and say, okay, we've got a fiscal budget put together, that the ongoing work of the school committee, and this is true for every school committee, and I say this everywhere, this isn't specific to Brockton, that monitoring facility is also a really important part of school committee work as well. Now, one of the questions that I get, and this is somewhat related to some of the report that you actually were just getting, is about cost centers. So school districts in Massachusetts are required, as you were hearing, to report their spending through what is known as the chart of accounts. And that's established by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It's about 13 or so accounts that everything gets divided into. I usually say that school committees should be passing their budgets at cost centers that are equivalent to the level of detail of the chart of accounts. Now, you don't have to pass your budget according to the chart of accounts. And part of the reason you may not want to pass your budget according to simply the chart of accounts is because one of the accounts in the chart of accounts is teachers. And that's going to be, I don't know, probably something like 70% of your budget all in one section, which I'm not sure is particularly useful in terms of the granular level that you necessarily need. The rule of thumb in terms of at what level should you establish your cost centers, which is a local decision that school committees should be making with their superintendents and their business office, is the school committee needs to be assured that funds are being spent appropriately to carry out goals and district policy. Remember, again, your responsibilities are related to one another, so it's not just how are we spending the money, but what are we doing with the money? What is it actually moving us towards? At the same time, the administration should not have to come back to the school committee to adjust spending if it isn't a matter of district policy. The old example I used to give is if they were deciding to spend money on pens instead of pencils, they shouldn't have to come back to the school committee. Not saying we're not buying pens and pencils, but we frequently are buying other kinds of things instead. And there are, however, going to be times at which adjustments have to be made over the course of the year. And that's where we got into questions of quarterly reports. Now, I also think it's important to talk about what does your budget document actually look like? And there are some excellent models out there, but I do think it's important for school committees in Massachusetts to have a couple of things in common and in mind when they get their budget document and then actually go through their deliberation and pass their cost centers as part of the deliberation. The first is that you should have all revenue sources. And again, this is part of the report that you just were receiving as well. Like, one of your revenue sources is grants. Grants come in a couple of different ways, but you certainly are a district, for example, that gets a significant amount of funding in Title I. That's an annual allocation that you get, and God willing, we'll have a federal government actually pass a budget, so we'll have another round of that happening. There also are grants that you get over the course of the year. You do need to find a process by which you actually are voting acceptance of those as well. I mentioned earlier that people understand information in different ways, and you may not be someone who necessarily feels hugely comfortable with seeing everything only in a spreadsheet. I am a very big advocate of school committees getting budgets that have narrative, like, why are these numbers changing? What are we doing here? What's happening? How is this related to our policy? How is this related to our goals? And also graphs, right? What are the numbers doing? How does this compare to one year to the next? If we're looking at all of our budget, what are the revenue sources? If we're looking at all of our budget, how do the cost centers measure up? I do think every budget needs expenditures by cost center with relative change. One of the things I do occasionally see budgets as I go across the state that have a nice list of, maybe munis numbers, not actually thinking that's necessary, and then have a whole bunch of dollar amounts and that's it. Well, I do this for a living and I can't tell anything from that, okay? Like, what happened last year? Is this higher? Is this lower? Why? What changed? What are we doing? Those are things that you actually need to know. And you need to know that, first of all, for you to make good decisions, but you also need to have that so that you can then actually be talking to the community about the decisions that you're making of, well, this cost center is going up and it's because of the collective bargaining agreement. It's because the cost of gasoline went up. It's because we expect to have to spend more on electricity. It's because some other cost has gone down and we've moved money. All of those things are important. And then finally, a budget really does need to have an articulated relationship between your spending and your district goals, right? We've said we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay. Are we spending the money to do X, Y, and Z? Because otherwise we said a nice thing, but we're not necessarily doing anything to get there. So make sure that your documentation actually has that as well. And then finally, quarterly reports are something that really are a best practice. They're not written into Mass General Law. I usually explain them as part of the review under that section of Chapter 71. But because any change of funding from one cost center to another has to be voted by the school committee, there needs to be some process and practice by which you do that. Quarterly reports are generally considered, and by here I'm citing not only my own authority but MASBO's, is a place for the school committee to have that conversation. So the first thing that you're doing in a quarterly report is you're saying, okay, we passed the budget with 10 or 15 cost centers. They each had a dollar amount. At this point in the year, first quarter, right now we're in second quarter, where are we at relative to what we said we were going to spend? You just heard from the city that you're about 54% through the fiscal year. Okay. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be 54% through spending your money. That's going to depend on the cost center. But are you where one might expect to be, given that it's towards the end of January? Are there places where you need to make changes? If you're moving money from one cost center to another, those have to be voted by the school committee. So things that I'm picking up, you probably have been spending some money on substitutes. Was it as much as you budgeted? Does money need to be moved there? There are probably districts that are looking at how much they were planning on spending on plowing and salting and sanding and trying to figure out whether or not those numbers were what they expected. Depending on what happens, certainly there were changes that a lot of districts made last year in terms of their utilities because gas went up and electricity went up. Is that going to happen again this year? That's something that people are keeping an eye on as well. And then finally, you got a message there from your consultant in terms of the question of projections. And I do think projections are one of the most valuable things that school committees really should be looking at in terms of their quarterly budget reports. And this is again because so much of a school district's budget is salaries. And the thing about people who work for you is that they're people. And that means that they get sick and they go on parental leave and they retire and all kinds of things happen over the course of the year. So regardless of when you pass your budget, and let me note, by the way, that there are school districts in Massachusetts that have already passed their FY25 budgets, there's always a gap between you passing your budget and you're starting to spend the money. And that space and time gives time for people to go on parental leave and go on sick leave and retire, or people get hired who cost more or less than was budgeted. The difference that is in there is something that is going to make a difference in your bottom line by the end of the year. So it's always really important for school committees to not only have, here's how much we budgeted, here's how much we spent, and here's how much is left, but here's how much we expect to spend given what we now know. Okay, and that's that projections that your consultant was just talking about, which I would agree is really crucial. Again, because so much of your budget is in salaries. And that's true, again, of every school committee in Massachusetts. So again, just want to highlight that as a best practice that's important for school committees. And those are the slides that I have for you this evening. But I am certainly, Mr. Chair, happy to take any questions that anyone on the committee has.
Sure, thank you very much.
Of course.
Committee, any questions? Ms. Azak, please.
It's not really a question, just want to thank you. I know these are different workshops that MASC puts on for the school committee, and there's quite a few of them. So hopefully throughout the year, we can have more workshops, and learning is key. You know, it's nice to always learn something, and a lot of this is like refresher for most of us. Yes. But I just wanted to say thank you for doing that, because sometimes people are watching and they don't realize what our roles are and what the superintendent's role is. But I just want to thank you.
Of course, yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Rodriguez, please.
Just to piggyback off Mrs. Azak, that's why I always share, charting the course with the rest of the committee. I know the last two classes, me and myself and Mrs. Ayers were in there. It's because every chart in the course is different. You take a different component from it. Mm-hmm. And in order for us to be more effective as school committee members, there's not enough training possible. And I know it states that you only take it once while you're a school committee member, but I think that the more you take it, the more you're going to be knowledgeable of how to sit in that role and make the appropriate decisions. It's just that when it came to, the budget, and we were going through the budget, and we were in, I believe it was in the April chart on the course, I'm like, wow, we just went through this, but, we learned it after the fact, and we couldn't implement. Wow, and we're looking at each other like, wow, we have a lot of work. So I always share with the committee. I know there's a few of them coming up. I've taken several within the last 4 years, but I always want to encourage to take as much training as possible. And I thank you for coming out here and making sure that everybody kind of gets a crash course in what our jobs and responsibility is, specifically finance.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we'll be running it again on Saturday in Hopkinton if anybody wants to come. It's always free for members, so if you want to spend Saturday with us, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Any other comments or questions from this committee? We want to thank you. Drive careful. We also want to thank you for your ability to wait when we kind of flipped 4 to 3, so thank you very much.
Of course. Make sure, there we go.
Mr. Committee, we have a pretty lengthy agenda, so we're going to continue to move forward. Agenda 5 is a consent agenda, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What is the will of the committee? Would we take them collectively, or does any matters come out singularly? Mr. Rodriguez, followed by Mrs. Sullivan, please.
I would like to take out E out of the agenda, the consent agenda. Approval of the African American Association of Brockton Future Leadership Scholarship.
Okay. It's a form of a motion. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Oh, yeah, I'll second it too. All in favor of taking that one out? Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Mrs. Sullivan?
That was the same one I
That was the
gonna
same one?
take out.
Okay. Any other matters before us relative to A, B, C, D, F, G? What is the will of the committee?
Motion to approve A, B, C, D, F, G.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion on the floor. It was properly seconded. Before we take a vote, I just want to read this into the roll, if I could. A is the approval of January 9, 2024 Facilities Usage and Planning Subcommittee meeting minutes. B is the approval of January 3, 2024 School Committee Organizational Meeting minutes. C is the approval of the December 19, 2023 Regular School Committee meeting minutes. D is the approval of December 5th, 2023 Diversity, Race, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee meeting minutes. F is the approval of out-of-state field trip, 2 BHS concert choir students to Providence, Rhode Island. And then G subsequently is the acceptance of human resources notifications as follows: appointments of certified personnel, appointments of non-certified, and then personal actions, which is leaves of absences, resignations, and retirements. We have a motion. It was properly seconded. A, B, C, D, F, and G. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. If you oppose, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Now we go to E, approval of the African American Association of Brockton Future Leadership Scholarship. Ms. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chair. This scholarship is in the amount of $250 from the African American Association Future Leadership Scholarship, which has a background in anybody that pursues a field into business. I spoke to the representative, Mrs. Hodges, and I just like to, thank them for actually taking the time to give back to the community. That's what it's all about, making sure that our kids have that support financially, because a lot of us are not, the community that we serve. The only issue that I have with this is I know this is like a standardized application, is I'm not comfortable, even as a parent, submitting like annual incomes, because that's part of the application process, and then also asking information of bank accounts and mortgages and outstanding bills. I would like if we can just postpone this, and hopefully it could go to the next meeting where we can, everybody collectively, we can agree to take this into acceptance. If we can alter that and kind of work with Dr. LeBoy and the organization to make sure that we see the actual application, not just the standardized one, because there's some families that will probably hesitant to apply for this if they have to provide their financial backgrounds, and that's kind of embarrassing, because that's some real personal information on there. So that was my only concern. I spoke to a few of the other members if they wanted to chime in on it, but I support this heartily that we accept this. But if we can just get a change on the application itself with the wording, with annual income, bank assets and securities, mortgage outstanding obligations, and that was the only thing that I actually pointed out. So I actually talked to Mrs. Hodges about that, and I understand this is one of the standardized ones that we have.
And that's form of a motion to extend it until the next meeting?
Yes.
It's a motion on the floor. Is there a second on that motion?
Comment
I don't know if
first.
she wanted.
Mrs. Sullivan?
I believe that's a requirement of all scholarships. I believe that is. The income is reported and they ask for certain things. I believe this is through the Brockton Public Schools, and it's with every scholarship. We would have to ask, the scholarship people, but I believe these are the forms that everybody uses for the scholarships are the same ones that
We
everyone.
have a scholarship book that Miss Julie Caldwell puts together every year. I'll send a copy of that to everybody. The applications are all in there.
Right, the requirements for an application, yes.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Cobbs.
Not all applications ask for some of those information. This is just the standardized one. I went through it with two of my children, so, but that was just my concern with that. So that's just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels. I just wanted to make sure, because as somebody financially not there, they don't want to put that information out there, so.
There is a motion on the floor. Is there a second on that motion to postpone it until the next meeting?
Okay.
Seeing none, that motion fails.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Once we get clarification, is this a standard application? Or are there, given the size of the scholarship, because I spoke with Dr. Connors earlier, and given the size of the scholarship, it might not need all that info. If she's available. But, maybe we should just check with Mrs. Cole, because if this is what they're given, and if this is what was given to them, then we need to make sure that we give them the proper applications.
On the motion?
If Mrs. Hodges is here and she's the one that proposed it, why don't we have her speak to the application while she's here? Does anybody mind if we can ask her those questions?
Any objections? Any objections? Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
So, yes, I am the president and founder of the African American Association along with my sister. So I know college, I've been through college, got my bachelor's, my master's, I'm working on my PhD now, so I know how expensive college can be. But yes, I got this standard form. I was actually looking at my email from Julie Caldwell. She sent me the standard form and I sent it back to her, like, did I do this correctly? Have it all filled out? And she said, yes, it's fine. I'll submit it to the committee for approval in January. So it was a form that was emailed to me. I just copied it, reworded everything, put my information in. So yeah, I didn't know if that was required or not, but yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Azak, please.
Thank you, Ms. Hodges. Scholarships help our students, and my two nieces are both in college right now, so I know the whole, if our students can get scholarships, it's wonderful, and thank you for stepping forward and doing this. And maybe we should just speak with Ms. Caldwell to, maybe they should have a certain form under a certain amount, and then for higher scholarships, might have a more detail, because I don't remember any of them for anything under thousands of dollars to submit all that, but she did submit what was given to her, so thank you for the clarification, Ms. Hodges.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think time is of the essence right now, right? So I think we could buy ourselves a little time just to make sure it's done right, not to disrespect you. We're so thankful for the scholarship, but I just want to make sure we're doing it right, and then once it's done right, it can be done right across the board. So we do have a motion. Did you have another question on the motion, Mrs. Sullivan?
No, it wasn't on the motion, but I just
Okay.
wanted to make a comment, but I don't have to make a
Okay,
further motion.
so we have a motion to postpone until the next meeting. It was made by Mr. Rodriguez, probably seconded by Ms. Azak. All in favor to postpone just until the next meeting? All opposed? It does carry. It does carry, so it will be postponed to the next regular meeting. And in the meantime, we'll work with Dr. Cobbs to make sure we get the answer. Mr. Rodriguez?
I'd like to thank the Hodges family for actually doing this. It's just that we have to make sure it's right because, like I told, some parents will be reluctant to say, I'm not going to apply for this when that child probably needs it because they have to give some financial statement. So we just don't want them to go to some type of embarrassment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gomes, followed by Mrs. Sullivan, please.
I just had a question. Do they have to provide proof of income?
Well, if you need the money, you apply to the scholarship.
So you just have to come to the podium because BCA is filming it, so it does have to be on the podium. Thank you.
Sorry about that. So basically, provide income. I'm doing a scholarship because, I want to help, high school students. So I was sent the form back late December. I filled out the form. I had a deadline to turn it in. I turned it in, and she said it would be sent to the school committee. So I'm following the form. Thanks.
Thank you.
So, Mrs. Sullivan, are you okay?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Jamie Hodges and her family for the scholarship. They do so many things for the community to try to include everybody. I mean, Jamie she was just a young girl, and she does the Juneteenth celebration with her family. She just did a great Christmas gifts for kids, all kids in this community. And she's planning another event right now. She has events going on all the time. If any parents are interested in joining her African American Association, but it is for all children, not just, that's just the name of it. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, we will get the answer, but it will be postponed to the next regular scheduled meeting. We're very thankful. We will continue to move on now. 6 on the agenda is unfinished business. We've done this 2 different meetings. It's the election of vice chair for the year 2024. I won't have to rehash the process. You all know. At this time, I'll open it up for nominations. Are there members that would nominate? I'll go to Ms. Azak, please.
It's okay, Mr. Sullivan can go first.
I'll go to Mr. Sullivan then.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to nominate Ms. Kathy Ellis, for vice chair of the school committee for 2024.
So motion made by Mr. Sullivan for Ms. Kathy Ellis. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second by Mrs. Sullivan. Kathy Ellis' name will be on the ballot. I'll go now back to you, Ms. Azak, please.
I just wanted to make a statement before I made the nomination, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
So, from what I'm feeling, nothing's going to change. So I wanted to see if we could work together. We have such a busy year between the deficit, between the audit, between everything going on. there's a lot of work, and it's a lot for just one vice chair. And given our community, our chair is the mayor, and he's running the city. You know, so, and I'm sure Mrs. Ehlers can back me up on this. It's a lot between the meetings, and we're going to have the subcommittees going on. If we can, I mean, our charter is 1973. It's time that we update things when it comes to our charter and some of our policies. I know it was a general MASC policy as far as, you know, if we're at a deadlock, we stay with the previous vice chair. We're split, and we can't keep doing this because I don't see anything changing. I'd like to propose if we could try to do co-vice chairs to work with our mayor, who is the chair. It's a lot of work, and we can try to split it up, and he would communicate with both co-chairs. I just wanted to throw that out there to the community, to our committee, because we can't keep doing this week after week. And I don't see votes changing. I don't see anyone flipping their vote. I just think the name calling, the letters, the emails, everything. You know, it's just we gotta go back to focusing on our students and getting our work done. And we're already halfway through January, and we have a lot to do. But we were looking for a different vice chair. We needed more communication. I think with two co-chairs, we should have no excuse not to have communication. I wanted to throw that out there because we're at a deadlock. So, I mean, I'd like to do that if we could. Maybe talk to our attorney. I mean, we could make the policy, see how it works out for this year, and then at the end of the year, if it works out great, because again, the way that our charter is written, our mayor is our chair. So there's a lot, and if you look at the duties and responsibilities of a vice chair, it really doesn't say that they do much, but they do a lot between meetings, phone calls, keeping us organized, communicating with the superintendent, just even notification. When you're working full-time, it's really difficult to try to keep everyone, you know, up to date as to what's going on. And given with a lot that we're going to be focusing on this year, I can't expect one person to be doing all that. Well, I just want to throw that out there. That's all. And hopefully the rest of the committee will support it, and we can just work through this. So we're not doing this every single week. We have to go back to focusing on our students and our staff and getting our work done. And if it's the same two candidates as we've had in the past, they each bring their expertise to the table, whether it's educational background or you know, policy procedure knowledge, things like that, community involvement. I think a shared responsibility will get us through this. But I'd like to see I mean, I can make the motion. I was just hoping to see what others would think.
Before you do, so we have a nomination. Nominations are open. I'm not closing them at all, but we do have Attorney Spotterfoot here. If nobody objects, could we ask Sarah her thoughts on that? Because we have a policy that sets one chair and one co-chair, but what are your thoughts, Attorney? First of all, good evening.
And just, it's dated 1973, so it's 50 years old. It is in the charter, but it's.
Good evening.
But
Hi. I wasn't aware of this proposal. I don't
just
think
came
it's a bad
about.
idea. I just would need some time to look through the policy and think about it before I could give you a legal opinion. It's not an abnormal concept. There are some committees that have that arrangement because somebody's planning to be gone for a period of time, whatever it might be. But I would just need a little time. So if it's something the committee's interested in, my suggestion would be perhaps we table the vote till the February 6th. You didn't set another meeting while I wasn't here to do, it was February 6th, our next meeting right now? Okay.
Yes.
So we table it for February 6th, and then I'd be happy to provide a legal opinion in the interim. I just want to make sure I look at it fully before I give you my off-the-cuff thoughts, rather than give you my off-the-cuff thoughts.
Ms. Azak, you still have the floor.
Sorry, Chair, yes. So we do have Tuesday the 23rd and Tuesday the 30th. So, I mean, yeah, we do want to rush it. We got a lot of work to get done, and we all bring something. We we need to get back to trying to be a team, and we all bring something to the table. And it's not like, oh, my person got in, your person got in. Let's just work together and try to get this, because it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing. You know, the attacks and stuff like that. It's just, if our students were doing this, what would we say to them? Try to work together. And I think this is probably the only solution, because I don't see both sides, anyone flipping. And so I was gonna nominate Mr. Tony Rodriguez as vice chair for 2024.
That's form of a
Form of a
motion.
motion.
Okay.
Second.
There's a second by Mr. Gomes, but prior to that, I guess I would want to, well, actually, I haven't closed the nominations yet, so there could be other names. What is the will of the committee relative to giving Attorney Spotterfoot some time? And we can call a special. I mean, we don't need to wait until, we only have another meeting, one meeting in February. That's not going to be enough. What's the will of the committee as a whole right now?
I make a motion for Attorney Spatafore to look into it legally. It's listed in the charter and in our policies, and we can't just decide here. We have to go by policy and our charter.
So we actually have a nomination process in place right now. We have 2 names on the ballot right now. So before I ask for any other nominations, is the will of the committee, and we need to have a unilateral decision, is the will of the committee to, in essence, withdraw both nominations, so Tony's name comes off, Kathy's name comes off, and we postpone the matter until the next meeting, which will be a special. That would give Attorney, how long time do you need, Attorney Spotterfoot?
I mean, a week should be fine.
Okay.
If you want to do it next Tuesday or the Tuesday after, whatever is most convenient for the committee.
Do we have a subcommittee next Tuesday? I can't remember.
Not yet.
I thought we had 2, didn't you call 2 referred to subcommittee?
It's going to be February 13th.
February? Okay. So is the will of the committee as a whole, does the committee agree that we can postpone this matter for 1 week's time?
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so then I would respectfully ask if that's the will of the, can we just do it by show of hands since nobody's on Zoom? Okay, so then I would respectfully ask Mr. Sullivan and Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Sullivan, if you would consider pulling your nomination, and Mrs. Sullivan, your second nomination relative to Ms. Ehlers.
Yes, I'll pull it.
And you'll pull it. Okay. And then Ms. Azak and Mr. Gomes, I would ask you the same relative to Mr. Rodriguez.
I'll remove my motion.
Your nomination motion?
Nomination for Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Okay. So, and at this time, there are no other nominations, correct? No other nominations, third and final time. That matter's closed. So what we will do then is we will postpone this agenda item until, and again, it's the will of the committee. We can do it next Tuesday if that works. We don't have a regular meeting. We could do it next Tuesday. That would give Attorney Spotterfoot time to come back. I think it's a good compromise if we can get there. Now, I do know this, even though the charter's old, to change a charter, it doesn't matter if it's City of Brockton, any charter, it has to be a charter committee, has to go back up to Beacon Hill. So the charter change doesn't have, that's a long process. But in terms of the policy, I think that's what we're looking for, Attorney Spotterfoot, on that.
Thank you. That's what I meant, is if we could suspend what we normally have as a policy and make this a policy for this year. And actually, Mayor, when we look at different districts, they have a chair and a vice chair, and they're both usually school committee members. And it might not be a bad practice.
I'd be happy not to be the mayor on the school committee, believe me. We could change the charter, get me the heck off of this place.
No. I meant, like, you're focusing on the city. So, and there's a lot of stuff that you need to do.
Yes.
That I think for one person, given what we have to do this year, it's a lot for one person to take on. Because like others have said, we're all equal, but it's a lot to take on for the vice chair. And I'm just thinking this might be the only compromise. But if you look at duties and roles at other committees that don't have their mayor as a chair, it does break down what the chair and the vice chair does. And it is a lot, and you do a lot, but again, you're focusing on the city, whereas we need to get back to business and try to get some stuff accomplished. We have a lot to get accomplished, and maybe if we can get a draft of some of the subcommittees, so we can just get everything going.
We have that. So I'll just have to, again, show a hand, or there was a motion, someone has to make a motion to postpone this matter?
Motion to postpone the election of vice chair to the next That's going to be a special meeting that we have. Special meeting for January 23rd,
What time is it?
6
Second.
PM. Does
Just
that
so the-
work?
this-
Oh,
6
7 PM?
Whatever works for the committee, 6 or 7?
I say 7.
7's better? Okay, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
So there was a motion made by Ms. Azak, it was properly seconded by Mr. Gomes. We will have a postponement of agenda item 6, unfinished business, but we will have a special meeting. I'll be working with, I'm actually going to DC tomorrow, but I'll be working with Mrs. Campbell on that. We'll have a special for next week. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. That will carry. Now we go on to agenda, and thank you all. Agenda 7, new business. Any new business before us?
That meeting's going to be here?
Pardon?
The meeting's going to be here?
Yes,
Okay.
7 PM next week.
Okay.
Any new business before us this evening relative to agenda item 7, new business? Seeing none, we'll move on. 8 is announcements. Are there any announcements? Ms. Azak, please.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to our senior class, the elected officers. So they had the presentation last Friday. It was wonderful. It was great to see their energy. And there's one student that I heard about from the John and Abigail Adams ceremony. But I met
He was the
Armani.
best, wasn't he?
Armani's energy,
The
he
best.
should just be like, his energy was amazing. So given the seriousness, this senior class really has not had a chance to fundraise. So they're going to be fundraising to try to raise money for their prom and other events. So please be on the lookout if anyone wants to, reach out to their senior advisor, whether it's, sponsorships. They're going to be doing raffles. So if we can all just even purchase a raffle. You have 600 some odd students that go to the prom. So if we can try to help them out as a community, especially with their fundraising, because like I said, they were the COVID, students that came through COVID and didn't have that chance to do the fundraising. So I just want to thank them, and it was an honor meeting them. And I guess they were so excited. So, if anyone wants to reach out, especially our students, reach out to us and tell us what your concerns and stuff are, and we'll work with you with whatever, we'll try our best. But I just want to acknowledge them.
Thank you, and we should invite our student representative back in short order. We should bring Anthony back. Any other announcements before us tonight relative to this agenda matter? Seeing none, we'll move on. Agenda 9 is executive session. I need to entertain a motion to go into executive session. I have to read the following into the record. There's 3 matters this evening. Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, to discuss the reputation, character, physical condition, or mental health rather than professional competence of an individual, or to discuss the discipline or dismissal of, or complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual. And that's Michael Thomas. And then Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, interim superintendent. And lastly, the third matter tonight for executive session, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares, BESPA, and the chair so declares. Is there a motion to go into executive session, please?
Motion to go into executive session.
Motion was made by Mrs. Sullivan. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sullivan made the second. I will need to read the roll to go into formal executive session. Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes.
Mr. Gomes? No. Mrs. Ehlers?
Yes.
Mrs. Oliver? Ms. Oliver?
No.
Mr. Rodriguez?
No.
Ms. Azak?
No.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
And I'm yes as well, but it does, oh, wait, is that 4-4? So that fails. That motion fails. So we are unable to go into executive session at this time relative to those matters. At this time, agenda item 10 is an adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion was made properly seconded. On the motion, though, I just want to let you know, I've been getting some text relative to school tomorrow, and again, that's superintendent, but we are actively salting and sanding not just the roadways, but all the school access and egress. There's a motion made, properly second to adjourn. All in favor, kindly raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. Please drive carefully. Be safe this evening.